Hi, this is Lynn-Terry of clicknews.com, and we have a special and fun guest here today. I'm going to talk to David Perdue on the 6 steps to executing big ideas, and not just executing, but executing them successfully. David Perdue is best known for the NAMS workshop, which is the Niche Affiliate Marketing System workshop, and that happens in Atlanta twice a year. As you guys know, I'm involved there. I teach there twice a year. I really love the hands-on atmosphere, the setup that David has there. Went to the very first one and fell in love with it, the actual format, and so I've been back ever since. So we're meeting in Atlanta again in August, and David is pretty much just one of the nicest guys you will ever meet, all-around great guy, along with his wife. And so anyway, I want to just introduce you to David. David, say hi and tell us a little bit about what we're going to learn from you.
Sure. Hi, Lynn. Thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. And thanks for saying such nice things about me and my wife. It was funny, just before we were on here, I said how lucky I was to have this wife, and Lynn said, yes, you are. So thank you so much for that. I realize how blessed I am. And the people who come to NAMS really get to know my wife too, because she runs the registration table when we're there, and sometimes on Sunday morning, if people beg her, she sings. She was an opera singer for 14 years, so she really has a voice.
It's lovely, yes.
So today, the reason I wanted to talk to you about this and to your folks about this is because there's a very simple system that has been in place forever for implementing ideas, and it's been used by all the great inventors. I mean, you see Benjamin Franklin here with these $100 bills, and I think that's really appropriate because Benjamin Franklin, he was a guy who used this system completely, and it's very simple. You just may not have seen it much put down because it is so simple, but I guarantee you use it every day in your life for just about everything. And when we go through this, you'll see how important it is.
Simple is good. Let me just interrupt you and say simple is good. I'm like the queen of free, cheap, and easy.
Well,
ever since I've been in business. This is my 15th year in business. And, you know, and people say, you know, start on a shoestring budget, but I start on a shoestring time budget. And that, you know, simple is good.
Yeah, and to tell the truth, I struggle with that because I have the big idea part is where I really find my strength. I do have big ideas, and they keep expanding and keep expanding and keep expanding. So if I'm not careful and don't follow this system, big ideas will get completely out of control. And that's why this is important.
You are not alone.
I know.
You are not alone.
We all suffer from this.
I have a storage room just for my ideas alone.
Right.
So I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
And you know, this is a blessing. I mean, having ideas is a blessing, and you definitely want to make sure that you give yourself the ability to implement these ideas. Otherwise, you know, ideas unimplemented are just a waste of time.
You know what happens? I'll tell you exactly what happens. Somebody else implements them.
That's right. That's right.
Do you have any idea how many times I've kicked myself when I saw my idea implemented by someone else? You know? And it's like, but what can you say? It's kind of like if you don't vote, your opinion doesn't count.
That's right.
It's the same. If you don't implement, you have no right to complain.
That's right. And you know, when that's a funny story. I remember when I was a kid, I was driving down the road with my dad, and my dad was a guy who was a daydreamer and an idea guy too, and he worked in a factory, and he was always coming up with ideas. In a forge factory, and he always was coming up with ideas for new ways of doing things, and he implemented quite a few of them. But one day we were driving down the road, and he saw I forget what it was, some kind of a trailer hitch invention on the back of a truck, and he slapped his hand against the steering wheel and said, "Damn, I just had that idea about 3 months ago. If I'd just done something with it, you know, we could have been rich." So yeah. That's really what we're talking about here, implementing your ideas.
You know, and that's where the money is. It's not just where the money is, it's where the success is. Like if you want to change your life, because we could stand on an assembly line in a factory at a job, you know, dreaming up ideas all day long.
All day.
But if you really want to change your life, it's about digging in and implementing.
Absolutely. You know, and this is one of my favorite quotes here from Thomas Watson, who was the IBM founder, and he was asked, "What is your secret to success?" And he said, well, would you like for me to give you the formula for success? It's quite simple, really. Double your rate of failure. We're thinking of failure as the enemy of success, but it isn't at all. You can be discouraged by failure or you can learn from it. So go ahead and make mistakes. Make all you can, because remember, that's where you will find success. And then we're going to come back to this in just a second. But here's the key. Make cheap mistakes. I mean, I've made lots of expensive mistakes in my life.
Yeah.
Those are not fun, you know. You can really do yourself some damage if you don't do this in a proper way. And that's what this is about today, is using these 6 steps to do something in a proper way. By the way, if people have questions about this, they should put questions in there in the question box, and we'll try to get to these as we go or at the end of the session today. So there is a science here that we're going to look at, and this is a time-tested science. I said that Benjamin Franklin was a good example when we started this, from that $100 bill on the front page. I love those, by the way, $100 bills. And Benjamin Franklin, he was a guy who did a lot of ideas. He had a lot of ideas, and then he would do models or drawings or prototypes, and then he would test those. Another person who was great at this was Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, he had a drawing for a submarine and a helicopter, all kinds of inventions that he never really got to beyond the prototype stage because technology wouldn't let him go there. But, you know, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, all the people with big ideas, they did prototypes first, then they tested it, then they executed it after they tested it. That means building it or writing it or doing whatever the actual work is.
They saw it through.
They saw it through.
And you know, these guys are not the only guys that ever had big ideas.
No, not at all.
Many a dreamer died without seeing it through.
That's right.
And but the reason we know them is because they saw it through.
Well, and the ones I really love are the guys that we don't know, who are sitting down on Florida on the Gulf Coast in these multi-million-dollar houses because they invented the windshield wiper, you know, or something like that. You know, we just use every day. A big idea can be a small idea too, and we want to remember that. So by the end of this webinar today, you're going to know exactly how to use that science to ensure that you're always failing towards success. That's a key, a big key. That Watson reminded us.
Failing towards success.
Yes.
I like that.
And
I kind of see myself as flailing towards success.
That's a different concept, Lynn.
We'll save that for the next webinar then.
The truth is, I don't believe that for a minute. I've never seen you flail towards success.
I always joke, you know, I'm flying by the seat of my pants over here.
And so another key is we want to reduce risk and cost. You know, so that's what this system is about as well. And, you know, we're talking to affiliate marketers here today. So how does this, we want to keep this focused on how this works for affiliate marketers as well.
Yeah, I think that it's very relative to, you know, affiliate marketers, because as an affiliate marketer myself, obviously, there are times that you invest, and it's either going to be time or money, if not both. You know, really going to market with a presentation for a merchant or whatever, like, you know, creating an affiliate site. But like I one time invested almost a year into an affiliate site, only to have it dumped, you know, back in my lap unusable right before the holiday shopping season. I mean, there's a lot of cost and risk involved, even if it's your own time, which is highly valuable when you think of the fact that, okay, I'm not working a full-time job, I'm not getting a paycheck, therefore this is costing me mega money, you know, to invest my time into. But yeah, this is definitely relevant and something we can all relate to.
Well, and you just made a great point. I mean, if you're doing something with your time that you don't necessarily want to do, then you're spending your time. That's a huge investment, and we don't have a lot of that to give away. So
yeah,
I
well,
completely
we
understand.
almost lost it. We almost lost it last weekend.
That's right. That's right. I'm so glad I was left behind this time.
Terrible. Anyway,
I know. So anyway, the thing that I wanted to say too about the last thing here on this page about failure is that every time I use this system, I've succeeded. Every time I shortcut or avoid or ignore this system, I fail. And there's two kinds of failure. You know, there's a failure that is, well, this isn't really what I think it's going to be, so I'm going to shut it down. Or it's something that needs to be improved on, and we can do that as well. And that's a failure. That's what I mean by failing towards success. Well,
you know what? Let me just finish my story so that it's understood. But that site that you know, I said was unusable right at the biggest shopping time of the year, I'm still operating to this day.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the absolute best lesson I ever learned. I mean, I could have just ditched it and moved on and said, hey, this doesn't work, forget it. But I took that and understood that as a lesson, the lesson that it was, and adjusted the way that I did things. So it has become a way that I do business now. You know, is to vary my merchants and have more options and not have all of my eggs in one basket. But sometimes you have to learn those lessons the hard way. And one of the big problems, you know, I have hear about all the time is with people who want to learn everything before they start.
Right.
That would be like, you know, wanting to learn everything about your idea before you implement it, and then somebody else implements it first. But the problem is you never really know the ins and outs until you get your hands dirty.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Until you really dig in and do it and fail or screw it up or whatever, and then you see how it doesn't work. That's the best way to see how it works.
Yep, I agree completely. You know, I always wanted to be a college professor in my retirement years. I think I just liked the idea of that. But I taught at 3 universities when I was younger, up until I was about 45. And what I realized was I had so much practical experience that because I didn't have a master's or a PhD, it really didn't mean much to the people that I was teaching. They learned a lot from my practical experience. But I couldn't be a professor because I wasn't a PhD. And did I want to go back and invest that time for that? I didn't think so. I wanted to get more experience. So there's nothing against that at all. It's just 2 different ways of approaching things.
Mm-hmm.
So I said earlier we think bigger and smaller. That's a really important thing. No big idea can be accomplished without thinking smaller. And that seems like a contradiction, but it's not. You know, Einstein said no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. So in other words, if you're seeing the problem and that's all you see, then you can't see the solution. And often it's the smaller details that make up the solution. You know, I live 35 miles south of Huntsville, Alabama, and that's where they made the Saturn V rockets. You know, this is not a Saturn V rocket in this picture here. It is a prototype of a Saturn V rocket. And you can see there's a man standing right here, so it's certainly, you know, relatively, I mean, it's a big model, but it's relatively small compared. And, you know, when you look at the real deal, it's huge. I mean, this is just a piece of it. And here's a guy here, and the rocket is composed of a gazillion pieces. You have to be able to break things down into smaller components to be able to solve really big problems. And, you know, Jules Verne I had here dreamed of the moon, and there were hundreds of people working on these small pieces to put the first man there. You can dream all day long. It's that implementation and breaking things down into smaller pieces that is really important. So I'm going to give you a little personal dreaming that I've done. And when I talk about dreams, I like to call these things dreams, but really they're ideas and intentions a lot of the times.
And there's your beautiful wife.
There is my beautiful wife on her beautiful motorcycle in front of our lovely log cabin in the woods where we live.
It's very nice.
Thank you. When we first started dating 13, 14 years ago, we went to a cabin of a friend in Georgia, in North Georgia up at Blue Ridge, and it was just really beautiful. Beautiful view. We were there at a great time of the year, and I said, boy, you know, I'd like to live in the woods someday. I like this a lot. And she did too. And so we just kind of put it out there. That was a dream that we had to do that. Now, I'm not a log cabin builder by trade. I've never done that in my life. But it was a dream of mine to build my own. So we started doing some investigating. We started visiting log cabin home building shows. We started looking at the different models that were out there. Those were the prototypes. We started designing the size of the house that we wanted to build and the intricacies of that. We have a wraparound porch that we added to this, a couple of screened-in porches on the back side. And on the front side there, it looks like it's a single story. On the back side, it's like a 3-story. So you know, it overlooks the water, and we started looking for the right property. We tested the area for all of the attributes that we were laying down. For example, we wanted to move back to Alabama to be closer to her mother, so we're 17 miles from her mother, and that's easy enough to get back and forth when we need to on a daily or every other day basis if we have to. She's 88 now.
Mm.
And but we wanted to be out in the woods. So we compared and found a plan that we wanted to use. And I started building this house, and I'll show you in a little bit a lot more about that, how we got into that and what that turned into, and what the pieces of this, how this 6-step thing fit into the building of the house. But it doesn't have to be just building the house. It can be building a doghouse. It can be writing a blog post. It can be creating a report. It fits for everything.
Building a website, creating a product. Right?
Absolutely.
There is definitely a process. There's definitely a process to that.
Yep. So Napoleon Hill, one of our favorite guys, and I know you have
Yes.
a real love for him as well, says first comes thought, then organization of that thought into ideas and plans, then transformation of those plans into reality. That last part's key, transformation of those plans into reality. The beginning, as you will observe, is in your imagination. The ideas are the beginning points of all fortunes, he says. I have a course that I've taken and a person that I study over the last few years, Mary Morrissey, and she puts together some very good prosperity type courses, kind of a new agey thing. But one of the things that she always says is everything's created twice. First in your thought, then in form.
Mm-hmm.
So if you dream up the shirt that you're wearing and have somebody make it, it's been created twice. And that's the way ideas work. That makes sense?
Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting to put it that way.
So it's hard to talk about big ideas and your dreams without the inspiration. So, you know, the thing that I talk to myself a lot.
I really have to watch that, especially on the back deck, because I have close neighbors.
Yeah,
It occurred to me just this morning. I was sitting out there having a conversation with myself, and I thought, you know, my neighbors must really be wondering.
Well, my mouth doesn't have to be moving for me to be talking to myself. That's the problem.
Oh, I'll try that trick.
I mean, I can talk to myself all day long. I used to ride my motorcycle for long trips, and I could be gone all day long and have just incredibly long creative conversations with myself and never have said a word. So it's kind of like finding a quiet place to be.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I'm known for saying I absolutely love to fly to Australia. And I recently flew to Australia just for the weekend, so I was actually traveling longer than I was there. And I love that flight, and that is the exact reason why. I don't talk out loud on that flight, by the way. But that is when I get my biggest burst of creative inspiration, is on that 14-hour flight between LA and Melbourne.
Well, you know, I used to commute back and forth to Atlanta and also commute from Birmingham to Seattle for consulting gigs I had for the last 3 years. And I found that when I went to Atlanta, if I just turned off the radio, I could be so creative. And I kept my little digital recorder with me, and I'd get ideas that I never would have gotten if I was listening to some talk show or something, you know?
Exactly.
So it really is important to get quiet. And then for me, the best inspiration for any idea is to ask, what if, you know? And it's about where's the trouble? What's the problem? And I said here, one of the rules that I instigated in consulting gigs that I had, I would go into these big companies, and I would run a project that was 50, 60 people, and we would have facilitated meetings, and people would want to say, well, that's never going to work. And I always said, okay, why not? What's your solution? Because if you're going to complain or criticize about a solution, a path we're going down, but you don't bring any positive, constructive solution to it, I don't want to hear it.
Interesting.
And that has worked for me as well. I mean, you just got to keep the naysayers away. That's really important.
In your own head, even.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the worst.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty common, is we'll say, well, that would never work, to ourselves. So it's a good rule to say to yourself, why not? What's the solution then? I like that. I think I'm gonna have to post that one.
Well, and here you're looking at this this common thread that I have with all businesses. Now this I think completely applies to affiliate marketers. If you're not solving a problem, you're not providing a service. And if you're not providing a service, who's going to buy your product? You agree with that?
I agree with that 100% because a lot of people don't understand affiliate marketing fully. They think, oh, it's just a way to make money. But it's not. I mean, there's a market leader position where you're either bringing a merchant to a market or you're bringing a market to a product. And so, or the other way around. But the whole thing is that you're providing a service, and it's a very much needed service. It's not just about marketing and advertising and trying to get in front of them at the right place and the right time. It's about serving that market in a way that the merchant may not be.
Right. And you know, I said here that great businesses are led by visionaries. That's a very scary word. When you think that well, I know visionaries, and you know, Bill Gates is a visionary. Steve Jobs is a visionary. Can David Perdue be a visionary? Can Lynn-Terry be a visionary? Absolutely. It's just our visions may be smaller, our execution may be simpler, and that's fine with me. I don't want the problems that come with having Microsoft.
Oh, right.
So, you know, we're all visionaries. When you're able to visualize a solution, you are a visionary.
Interesting.
Now, the steps. This is pretty simple. And when you see it, you look at this and you think, well, yeah, sure, this is it. And this is it. This is what everybody uses. Whether they have these things written down, whether they've studied this or whether this has been something that's implemented formally, this is what you use, I guarantee you. It is to dream. That's where your big idea comes from. It's that inspiration. And that's not to be ignored. That's to give yourself time every day to be able to come up with ideas and keep a list of them. You know, if you don't keep track of your ideas, they go away. I mean, I can't hold on to them.
No, I have an idea journal.
Yeah.
I keep it in my bag. But you know what, I've switched because I'm making this big push to go digital, and now I use Evernote, and I have my idea journal in Evernote. And the reason I do that is because as people have seen my home office, I've done a virtual tour, and I have so many mobile devices and stationary devices, and they're like Mac and PC and Android and iPad, and Evernote is the one thing that is cross-platform that works everywhere on every device that I have.
And that's really important.
If you don't want to carry a man purse, guys, or if you don't want to carry a real physical journal, Evernote is definitely a very good solution for keeping those ideas.
Right, right. So once you get the big idea and you decide you're going to do something with it, you know, that's one of the things I do too, is go back and look at my ideas and say, you know, was that really a good idea? And, you know, tomorrow it may not be. But today it may be, and tomorrow I may put it aside and say, well, that maybe is an idea for later. Or here's an example of a really good idea, and it still is a really good idea, and it's something I'm planning to do on my 60th birthday. I built that house, by the way, on my 50th birthday, that year of my 50th year.
Congratulations, by the way, because that was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. On the 60th birthday, I would like to take a trip around the United States on my motorcycle and spend a week in each state. So it's a year-long trip, and I want to do it with my wife, who loves motorcycles as well. And so we've got this plan for doing this and blogging about it, and I've got a specific task for doing it. Well, I had this idea when I was about 40, and I wanted to do it then. But you know, I wanted to take my 35mm camera equipment with me, and I wanted to take a computer with me, and I couldn't figure out how to strap my desktop to the back of it at that point. And now, you know, I can take an iPad and a digital video computer, a digital video camera and a digital camera, and that may even be one camera, and just put it in a saddlebag, and I'm good. So the time for this idea has come.
I have to interrupt you and tell you I got a Canon Vixia, and it's small, like the size of my hand. It's not much larger than the size of my hand, but it does both HD video and very nice still photos, and it's very newbie friendly for the technophobes like me. It has an auto switch where you can do photos or video, either or, and it'll pick the best setting for you.
Yeah.
And it does a very, very good job of it. Talk about, you know, taking out the need to carry so much equipment, and everything is so small now. Really opens things up. I have to stop you real quick and ask you about prototype.
Yep.
It's a small word, but it's kind of a big word. And
it's a scary word.
As an affiliate marketer, would that be likened to when I sit down and do a mind map of what my affiliate site may look like if I decide to create it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, gotcha.
And the prototype is a big word and a scary word, but it really doesn't mean anything. You know, there have been patents that have been subscribed and assigned based on a drawing on the back of a napkin. That's a prototype.
Gotcha. It's kind of like when I do, draw squares or whatever and put everything together on my whiteboard before I actually implement it. I got it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, the bigger the idea and the bigger the project, this prototype thing can be really extensive. For example, if you use a website like att.com, let's use that website. That is a huge, huge website with thousands. I know this one personally, so I know that it has thousands and thousands of pages. So when there's a website improvement done to a section, let's say just pay your bill section, it starts out with a Visio diagram of what they just boxes and arrows, what the flow is. Then it moves into a data flow diagram. Then it moves into a wireframe, what's called a wireframe, and that is just a fleshed out diagram of each page where it shows where the content is going to be, where the buttons are, and what's going to say what. And then it goes into a clickable wireframe so that you can actually click through the site to see what happens, and then it gets scanned with HTML, and then it gets implemented. So that is prototype test, prototype test, prototype test, prototype test, and that's for a really big and expensive project. For my websites, I do boxes and arrows, and I create a page, and then I run some tests, and
Right.
then I revise. I go through this process. The key about prototyping and testing, though, is those two steps are guaranteed to save you money. Right there.
Yeah, because it's real easy to just dream and execute, dream and execute, dream and execute.
Yep. If you go dream and execute, you're dead.
Yeah.
It's like playing with rattlesnakes.
I've done that before.
Me too.
And what you end up with is you just end up, junking up the web, cluttering up your business with all this stuff that you don't even know whether it really works or not, and you haven't learned anything from it, and you haven't taken it to max profit potential, which to me is like,
the
affiliate
point.
Marketing sin. Right? Exactly.
Well, and the other thing, when you go dream and execute, if it's already on something that's existing, you may break it. And if you don't go through this prototype test process, when you talk to Terry Dean about conversions, I mean, the guy is a conversion freak, right? And when you talk about conversions, you don't want to bust anything that's working already, and you don't want to do you don't want to go to your website and decide, oh, I need to put a new header on this because somebody said I need to.
Or because you don't like it or you're tired of it.
Exactly.
And we have to remind ourselves all the time, I am not my target market. My opinion does not matter.
Yeah, exactly.
That's important. Let me just stop you and ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Terry Dean did a fabulous webinar with you recently as
He did.
part of the NAMS training series. Is that available publicly or only to attendees?
That is available publicly.
Okay.
And I'm going to have a way for people to actually get to that. I want them to get to it through you, so let me make sure I've got the right link there.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I just wanted to double check because I hate for anyone that missed that not to have an opportunity to listen in if it was still available publicly.
Well, it was fabulous. I mean, we've already done 4 of the public deep dive sessions, and Mark Hendricks, let's see, then you, then who was next?
Yeah, I was
Denise?
pretty good.
You were pretty good. You always get big raves.
Double header.
Yep.
I did a double header. No, but the feedback from Terry's session alone was just over the top.
It
really
is.
Good. So yeah.
And I got that course, and I am wading through it, and it's going to change the way I do everything.
Yeah.
It really is. It is. So the point is, fail at prototype. That means you can, and where you would fail at the prototype is that you build something or you draw it out and you say, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and it won't work. So let's stop here. Or it's going to be, I can't do this until, well, for example, with my motorcycle trip, it failed in the prototype because I thought, I'm going to have a Winnebago follow me all over the country, and that's not going to work. But now, because of the way technology's changed, it's viable again as a prototyped option. So now I can draw that prototype out. I can bring back that information and start developing it. The next thing I do is go to the test. I test to see if there's a market for this, if there's an interest for this, and so I'll be 60 in 2 years. So I would say in a year, maybe 6 months, you're going to start seeing stuff about this site, and I'm going to start taking submissions for this site. And if people are interested enough, I'll go do it. If not, I just may go to the Grand Canyon and call it quits.
I think it would be super fun. You'll have to be in Tennessee for a whole week, of course.
Of course.
So I will have to come interview you about your trip.
Okay, that'll be fun. I'm always going to be looking for places to stay, by the way.
Oh, yeah, yes. Have a back deck you guys would enjoy.
Well, and I have a lot of Marriott points, so there we go.
There you go.
All right, so the testing is really important. And there's a question here that says, when you say run test, you mean when the website is live, right? No, I really don't mean that. There's testing all along the way. And if you are talking about a website, one of the things you want to do is if it's a big website, if it's a let's say it's your money-making website, is that you may want to run it by a select market group. You know, you put it up there.
Usability.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to make sure that it flows correctly and that you have all of your automation processes in place. Nothing breaks before you throw it up there. The worst thing that can happen, and unfortunately I've done this way too many times, is that people go to something and they get it and then they come back and say, well, the link didn't work or whatever it is. And that's just a pain.
Yeah, it's really bad when you dream, execute, test.
Yeah.
Because I've done that before.
I have done that
Your market has to tell you why it failed.
Yep.
And then you have to recover from that. You know, interesting too for affiliate marketers, you may remember the old term flycatcher page, you may not. But there are a couple of different ways. If you're wanting to get into an affiliate market and you just kind of want to test the waters before you go out and go ahead and build out a site or pay to have one developed, you know, a couple of things you can do. You can run some AdWords campaigns. And this, as an affiliate, before you create a product in a market, let's say you want to create a product, but you want to get some feedback first. You can run affiliate campaigns and see if products sell in that market, same types of products like info products or physical products, not necessarily competitors' products. But the other thing you can do is offer them a free guide in exchange for filling out a quick survey. So you basically get, see if there's anyone interested enough, to take the time to fill out a survey, and then you have a list you can pre-sell to, also. But there are lots of different ways to test, and kind of get a feel for the market and how responsive they are to specific things prior to building out a site. And
one of the great things that I liked about Perry Marshall's book, Definitive Guide to Google AdWords, I heard him on a webinar or a teleseminar then. Talking about it, and he used this test system to decide how he was going to name his product. It was a Christian product that he was putting out, and so he put 5 titles in a AdWords campaign, and ran the titles to a rotator, and determined with about $10 that one of those titles drew way much more than the other ones. And so that became his title. He tested his title for that before he even wrote the book.
Yeah, and you know that most people who have a HostGator account, if you log into your cPanel, you'll probably find an AdWords coupon in there.
Yep, I think it's a $50 or $100 one now too.
Yeah, it's plenty to run a quick test. Yeah.
Sure is. So somebody said, what's a rotator? It is a process in Google AdWords where you can load multiple responses, and when somebody clicks on it, they get shown something different every time in that series. So that's what a rotator is. So okay, so we've done our failure in the test, and we've done our failure in the prototype. Now, see, I did not say success here because we're not looking for success. We're looking for the kinks, and that's what doesn't work. What doesn't work. And so after you get the kinks worked out, the next thing to do is to move to execute. You decide at that point whether you're going to do this or not based on your test and your prototype. And you look at your budget and you look at all the stuff, and we're going to get into some detail on these items here too, so I'm not going to go into it much right now. But this is where you spend the money. You shouldn't have spent much money at this point, but if you decide to do this, this is where you spend the money. And then you go to feedback. This is really important, and we're going to talk. I've got a little case study at the end about NAMs and how we use feedback to build NAMs. So we're going to talk about feedback quite a bit. Now, the key problem is, of course, if you don't implement the feedback and improve whatever you've got, then you're really missing out on the opportunity to maximize that profit that you were talking about.
Exactly.
And so then you come back.
Know what? People don't always come right out and tell you directly what the feedback is. Like, not everybody's going to walk up to you and say, your website sucks because. So sometimes you have to listen to the feedback that's unspoken, which is in your unsubscribe rate, your click-through rate, your website stats, things like that. So sometimes that feedback is unspoken feedback that you have to find in your own stats, and then you need to improve based on that feedback.
In fact, verbal feedback is often the worst.
It can be downright painful.
It can be. Well, besides that, but I mean, it also is usually not the most accurate.
Right, right.
The thing about, I don't know if you've ever taken, well, I'm sure you have. Everybody's taken those Myers-Briggs and different kind of tests, right? Well, sometimes they ask this. You really haven't? I
really haven't.
Oh. It's fun to do that. It's weird because you never think you're that person when you come out at the end of it. But when you go through those things, they always ask you the same question about 10 different ways. And the reason they do that is because they don't trust you to give the right answer just one time.
Interesting. Interesting.
So then you come back to your original dream. How does your feedback and your execution and your testing and the improvement impact your original dream? And we're going to talk about some of the products that are on the market today that everybody's familiar with that started out as something different and ended up being something else. So when we talk about these 6 steps, dream, prototype, test, execute, feedback, and improve, the same process gets you through every situation. That's the point of that. It gets you through every situation, small to large. And sometimes the dream and the prototype and the test can be done in like 10 minutes because it's such a small thing. I'll give you an example. I found out 6 weeks ago, maybe 8 weeks now, that I was pre-diabetic. I knew that. 20 years ago I knew that because my entire family was diabetic when they got into their 60s and 70s and 80s. But the doctor finally told me that my sugar was high and that I needed to change things. And so I thought, okay, it's time for me to make some changes. So I needed to lose about 30 pounds. And so I had a dream, lose 30 pounds. The prototype was basically asking the question, what does that look like, losing 30 pounds? Well, it means I can wear the clothes that are in my closet that I keep back in the corner. You know, the pants that used to fit me 7 years ago. When my daughter got married a couple of weeks ago, I was able to wear the jacket that I hadn't worn in 7 years because in that 2 months, I started testing with the help of a nutritionist the kind of foods, combinations, the calories, all that stuff to get me where I wanted to be. And then I executed that by following that diet, by tracking, and I used my FitnessPal on my iPhone to keep track of my daily calorie intake with all of my fat, my protein, and carbohydrates and all that kind of stuff. And in less than 2 months, I've lost 20 pounds.
Wow.
So, you know, the feedback is I've lost 20 pounds. So that's great. I get to wear those pants again that I couldn't get into last year or the year before or whatever. And so now I have a goal that I want to be healthier, so now I'm going to the gym and exercising more. So that's the improvement on this whole thing. It works on everything.
You know, it really does work on everything. I mean, I look at it like let's say you wanted to get married.
Yep. Let's say that.
Yeah. I mean, you've done it successfully, so obviously you use these 6 steps, but do you get feedback? I know you've already executed. You married her, what, 13 years ago, you said?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you get feedback.
Okay, so let me give you an example. Here's a marriage gone bad. My first marriage, I was 19 years old and in the Air Force and wanted to get out of the house so bad that I executed. I didn't prototype that one or test it.
Dream, execute. Dream, execute.
Dream, executed. Right. And you know, 16 years later, I really wanted to execute. And that marriage went bad. So the feedback was, you know, we couldn't live with each other. And that ended up in a divorce. Now, with Charlesa, we dreamed about getting married. And you know what we did? We talked about what it was, what the marriage should be like, what we wanted in a relationship. And then we went to a marriage counselor for 6 weeks prior to getting married.
Wow. And
so we tested it for 6 weeks at a marriage counselor. And then we executed the marriage. And we continually give each other feedback. One of the ways we do this on an annual basis is that on New Year's Eve, we sit down and go over what our goals were for last year and what our goals are for next year. And we see how we're working together to achieve those goals.
Very nice. Very
it works
nice.
well that way. And it's like I told you earlier, I can't believe I've been married happily for 13 years.
Yeah. She's absolutely great. You did good.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll tell her you said so. Let's see. So one of the things here is be open to the solution. That is really important to me because it sometimes comes from left field, and you got to be available to make a left turn when you need to.
This is true, and you say it may not be what you think it is. I think back to that affiliate site. My very first major investment in niche affiliate marketing, and I could have just junked it. I mean, it was coming up on the end of the first year. The domain name was going to have to be renewed, and yada yada yada. But the solution wasn't okay. Lesson learned. I lost out. The solution was to pull in other merchants, to use multiple merchants. That's where I came up with my affiliate marketing motto of always work with a minimum of 3 merchants on any one given affiliate site. You have a primary merchant and at least 2 secondary merchants, always.
Yeah.
So that golden rule for affiliate marketing came from that failure.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I told you not long ago that at NAMS on the opening morning I'm going to do a 1-hour talk about single point of failure because one of the things that we are doing in this business as it gets more and more complicated, more kind of permeated with all the companies that we deal with and all the technology that we have to use, there are 2 things that scare me to death, and that is PayPal and WordPress. I love them both, but they can both kill my business in a minute. And so what if somebody came up and said, well, Google just bought WordPress, and now WordPress is $100 a month per site. What would you do?
I'd pay it.
Right.
I'd fork out my credit card.
Right. So there is that.
$100, shoot. I'd pay it all day long.
So, but the thing is, I told you yesterday, I went through the last 9 months of getting hit at every single point of failure point that I had, and that some of it was human and some of it was technological, and it's made me very aware of how important having all those bottlenecks closed or like you said, a secondary option. That's really important.
Right.
So we talked about the dream. We're going to go through these a little more specifically and individually. Get quiet. Your creative thinking happens when you are in the shower. I mean, how many great ideas do you have in the shower? There's nothing else to do there except wash your body and sing. Well, if you sing, you're distracting yourself. But if you're thinking, I get a lot of great ideas in the shower. And like I said, I rode my motorcycle because the hum of the motorcycle was like meditation to me. A lot of people would say that meditation is a great way to do this. That, when you're supposed to be emptying your mind, often good ideas pop into your mind.
Oh, you know what? I just have to interject and say, I just ordered from Amazon. I'm such an Amazon junkie. It's really bad. I just ordered one of those noise machines, white noise machines.
Yep.
That has 10 different, one of them, like the rainforest and the ocean and different things like that. Yeah. Because in the summer months, I have a home office, and in the summer months the house can get quite busy or distracting or whatever. And so I find that white noise machine, and I've had them before, but I find that to be very nice to put on in my office when I'm focusing on brainstorming.
And so we talked about...
I don't do it in the shower, but it's close enough. I got the ocean going.
Well, if you get a waterproof one, you can do it there too if you want. So we talked about sources of triggers for ideas. There's always a problem. Always look for a problem, and your ideas should be about solving that problem. And we talked about ways to file the things: notepads, recorders, iPhone, mind maps, and you said Evernote was a good solution.
Evernote.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Especially because so many of us are Mac PC cross now.
Right. And that's important.
It was never the case before.
Right.
In the last 2 years, there's been a lot of people crossing over both sides. So Evernote's the solution.
So the prototype, what does it look like? That's the question you're answering. And the visual part of this is really important because you have to draw it out. On the next slide, I think it's the next slide, I'm going to show you something that I call the art of the napkin. This is really a whiteboard. Your prototype can be anything from a drawing, a narrative, pictures, storyboards.
Mind map.
Mind map. any great painter doesn't just go out and paint what they see. They start with a sketch, and the sketch is the prototype. And always under, I mean, you go to Da Vinci or whoever, and you do if you go to a fresco wall somewhere and they're restoring it, sometimes they get down to the point where they can actually see the pencil drawing behind it. That's the prototype. The form to represent it on when you do a prototype, that's when you put it into form that other people can look at, because what you're doing is communicating. That's what a prototype is for, is to communicate your idea. So it's a paper process, a simulation, website click-through, physical construction. Here's the art of the napkin. This is a whiteboard drawing. I facilitated a meeting and just took notes. This is me taking notes on the whiteboard as we were visually drawing out what a work entry type process was. And this makes no sense to anybody, including the people that were in the room. But it made a lot of sense to me, and I was able to take that and put it into something like this, which has a lot of meaning for them. And they can look at this, and there's a bunch of words that go with this. And so there's a lot of, it's like 15 steps that were defined in the words that went with this, from little arrows that dropped down. And each of these elements represented a different pipe in the, or different time in the pipeline. And so that's the prototype for the entire work entry process that we were looking at.
Very interesting.
So the test we talked about was working out the kinks. More failure is good. Subjective versus objective. This is important. Your mom and your family, they're going to give you great positive feedback. You never did anything wrong. If you've got the kind of mother who likes everything you do. Some parents,
I was going to say.
If you had the kind of mother who liked nothing you did, you don't want to ask them either, because that's also subjective. But objective feedback is what you're after, and I find that mastermind groups, focus groups, AdWord campaigns, those kind of things give you usually the kind of objective feedback that you're looking for in test. And the types of tests, this is from my corporate world, really. Blind test and scripted test. I've seen scripted tests that were, 20, 30 pages of do this, do that, and did that succeed? And it's like, click this button, you should see this. Does that succeed? If not, then the exception is that you had an error message or you did something else. But what I really like is the blind test, because in the blind test, you give somebody a website or a book to read or something and say, go tell me what you think of this. And they go look at it and they come back and they say, well, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out how to get started.
We do this a lot in my weekly brainstorming hour, and I like to do them blind as well. And sometimes the person who owns the site that puts their site up for review or a specific page up for review will give us a slant, like, what do you see first, or or this or that, or I'll give the group a slant, like what stands out to you immediately.
Right.
Don't think, just type. But we do usability tests this way. When people just create pages and they haven't launched them yet or whatever, and we'll say the eye is pulled completely to the left, I totally missed your call to action on the right, that kind of thing. But you get the best feedback by just putting it in front of someone and letting them immediately respond.
I agree. And I think the reason corporate websites get in such a mess is because the tests are so scripted. Because the other thing that happens in a blind test is users will always figure out the fastest way. I mean, I can guarantee you that if you want them to go down a path and you're trying to funnel them down this path so they can only do this, they're going to always find a shortcut if there is one. And then you want to incorporate that.
They're not blinded. They're not blinded by the project like you are as the person who developed it, and they don't know how everything works behind the scenes.
That's right.
So they're either going to hit the back button or they're going to take an action on the page, and they're going to do it pretty quick.
They're right. That's right. They don't have the patience that you do working on the project.
Very short attention span.
Yep. And the thing about testing is, when do you stop testing? That's always a great a big question, because you can test something forever and never get it out. And I always like Microsoft's supposed mantra from the early days, which was, it's good enough. And that is, roll it out Once it works mostly, roll it out, create version 1, make money with it, finance version 2, make more money. And they have been the masters of that approach. I never buy version 1 of anything from Microsoft because version 2 is where they fixed it.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Good. Let's talk about this next one, though, which is, does it solve another problem? So there's Viagra and Post-it notes. These two products were created not to solve the problems that they did create. Viagra was supposed to help with angina and blood pressure medicine. And it didn't work so well for those. But they found out it worked really well for something else.
Interesting.
And so they decided they could market that as an erectile dysfunction drug. By the way, erectile dysfunction didn't happen until Viagra came around. Right? Before that, it was impotence. And men didn't want to talk about impotence, but they could talk about erectile dysfunction. Post-it notes was a glue that failed. And this guy at 3M had this glue that was supposed to be a soft stick glue, but it was not good enough for, and 3M, the 3M managers said, well, this isn't a great glue, we can't use this. And another guy in the factory saw it, or in the product development saw it and said, wait a minute, if I put that on the back of a piece of paper, I can stick it to my computer, I can stick it to a whiteboard or whatever, and it'll stay and peel right off and it won't leave a mess. So
this goes back to what you said about, you know, if the answer is no or that won't work, then you ask yourself why and what can I do about that. That's very interesting.
It's also where feedback comes in, because it was the feedback of other people who told them what it really worked for.
Right.
And then the fatal testing errors is samples too small. Sometimes we ask 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people and think we've got an answer. And often you need 10, 20, 100. It's like pay-per-click. When do you know to switch out your A/B testing? How many clicks does it take? Some people say it takes 100. Some people say 30. Some people say 500. It depends on your traffic and your market.
The size, the size and depth of your market. It's interesting. You can't answer a question like that.
Nope.
Generically.
You can't.
I was going to say 1,000. But it really depends, you know. Like, and I have one niche site that's only ever going to make about $500 a month, even with top listings, because of the depth of the market. It's not very deep, and I know that, so that's good. But and so the answers for that site would be completely different than the answers for another site. Standards. That makes it hard for people.
It does. I've got one niche site that makes me about $27 a month, and I haven't touched it. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I have honed the keywords down to one keyword. And I only use that one keyword because that's the only one that succeeds. And it costs me about 50 cents a month to make $27 on that. And it's done that for 4 years. And I think, you know, $27 isn't enough to worry about. But I don't. I never worry about it. You know, it's there.
No, but the profit's been, what, $1,600 at least?
Yeah, the profit's huge. The profit's huge.
Right. At this point, yeah. And when you think about putting one thing into place, like I've taught at NAM several times about things that I have that have consistently earned $100 a month or $100 a quarter for over 5 years. Why wouldn't you spend 30 minutes putting something like that in place? Most people wouldn't. That's why it works so well for us.
Well, and if you can do that, and you can do 100 of those, I mean, you know, you're sitting on easy street.
Over time. That doesn't mean sit down in 30 days and do 100 of them.
No.
It means over the years you just continue. And you know what? Not all of them panned out to be long-term passive income generators.
Right.
Yeah, but some do and some don't.
And what did you learn about testing evergreen versus hot market stuff?
Yeah, I still like hot markets, but evergreen, that's the key.
That is the key.
That's the key. That's the key to me being able to, you know, travel all over the place and quote unquote make money while I sleep, you know, and make all those red headlines really come true.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So the other fatal testing errors is the wrong market sampled or the sample is biased. And the sample being biased is often when you ask for answers, such as in questionnaires or something, you give people the wrong, you ask questions, but you give them the wrong choices for answers. And so you don't really ever get the right answer. That's why it's so important to do some kind of open-ended questioning.
You know, and your own peer group. is
Yeah.
going to tend to give you the answers they think that you want.
That's right.
And offline is a great way to test too. It's inexpensive, really. Craigslist even. Craigslist I consider to be like the offline classifieds because everybody offline uses Craigslist. But Craigslist or even offline, run ads and gauge the response. And if you can do incentivized surveys where you offer them a coupon code for something relevant to the survey, just for answering some random questions, the blind test.
So let's move to execute. We're going to have to buzz through here pretty quickly, I think. This is where you spend the money. Gather your team. If you don't have a budget, it may be just you. If you've got a budget for it and you've got a team that you can put together, you put that together, you create a project plan, and here's the key. The team determines the project task, not the project manager, and that would be you in most cases, because the team's going to tell you what they have to do to make it successful. They've got to understand what your deadline is and what your dependencies are. Dependencies being the dependencies being, I got to have this before this will work. And it's a very simple project system.
That's an interesting tip. That right there removes all the frustration between project manager and freelancer or employee.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have to jot that down. Yeah, good stuff. No wonder people are so frustrated with me sometimes.
So,
that's a good tip. Go ahead.
And convert the prototype to product. Here's where the house thing was. I started with this house, and we dug a hole. That was the first thing on the house, right? After we drew, the first thing on the construction. But first we started with the blueprint, and we dug a hole where the foundation was going to go. Then we laid the log interconnecting pieces for the log house after we did the basement and all that stuff. So you had natural steps that you go through to do this. And and then you end up with the house when it's finished. And it's an amazing, that's the most fun I've ever had in my life. And I end up coming back to this over and over, and I talk about getting things done because I remember standing back in that hole right there where that bucket is. I stood there and looked around at this hole, and I thought, holy crap, what have I done? Because I was committed to spending, $150,000 and building this thing myself, and I didn't have any idea how to do it.
Do you know how many people dream of having a log cabin in the woods?
A lot do.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, and you did it. I mean, that's got to feel awesome.
It is. It's awesome. I also haven't taken advantage of that niche market yet either.
There you go.
Yeah. So feedback, we talked about this a lot, market, communication, technical. You made some really good points. The market is always the best feedback. So if you're not getting the feedback from your market, you're missing a big thing. The communication piece is what they're telling you, but what I really like is the action that comes from the technical feedback. What are the traffic trends? What are the click-throughs? What are your bounce rates? All of that stuff that gives you an idea of where people are going on the web pages. I like to, and I don't use them very often, but I really like the click maps that show you where people are clicking on your page.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. Those are nice. Those are nice. I think about that. I think that's probably the most important feedback that you can get. Like, let's say, for example, the Twitter app for Android, awesome app, recently updated. Totally crashed my phone.
Right.
And it was between me and a few other Android users that we finally figured out which app was crashing our phone. And I was the one who uninstalled it, tested another one, and got everything worked out and said that was the one. So anyway, I didn't go through the trouble of leaving feedback on the app page. You can comment there and say, this is crashing my phone, because my phone was crashing. But in addition to the feedback people actually send you, when you look at your stats, let's say they put that update out and they lost 10 or 15% immediately.
Something's wrong.
That's feedback.
That is.
That is feedback, right.
So you can always continue gathering feedback and acting on it. There are some errors there: infrequent attention to feedback, ignoring all the feedback flow, and focusing on just one, which is what you were just talking about. The one being the feedback in the app reviews versus yeah, and not acting on feedback. Not acting on feedback is a huge mistake.
Yeah.
To improve and make things better, you got to measure the results. If you don't have a spreadsheet, if you don't have a bar chart, if you don't have some kind of data analysis tool, you can't be accurate in your ability to improve and implement feedback.
Right.
So here's a mind map that I used as a prototype for this presentation. I use a mind map for all presentations. And if people want to get this mind map, and there's a 6-part e-course, that free e-course, by the way, that they can come to, and we'll go through these things in detail and give more experience on these. They can go to this link, nams.ws/6lynn, L-Y-N-N. And that will put them into your affiliate funnel, by the way. And guess what I'm doing here?
What are you doing?
This is a test. How interested are people in this topic? I'll know by the way people click through on this link, right?
Right. And now, does this, when I click the link, am I going to be able to download the actual mind map, or is it a PDF, like a visual?
It's going to be an actual mind map so that they can use it.
Oh, very nice.
And I'll also add the FreeMind, the link to FreeMind with it. You can import this in whatever mind map software you're using, but it is a free mind map.
I use iThoughts HD on the iPad, and it will import.
It won't import?
It will.
Yeah,
yes.
it will. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I thought
yeah.
it does on the iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
I use it on the iPhone.
Very nice.
Okay, so that was nams.ws/6lynn. No price to that.
And the 6-part e-course, tell me about that.
It's going to go through each one of those steps in this e-course and really talk about what those pieces are. And there you are.
Yeah. That was NAMS 1.
It was.
Right?
It
or
was
2?
NAMS 1. NAMS 1.
Mm-hmm.
And this case study about NAMS is going to be quick. We started as an idea for weekend training for my affiliates. And one of the things that I got to with this was, just inviting people to come to Atlanta. And word got out that I was putting this together. And you called me and said, how can I promote this? How can I get involved? And when you called, I said, oh boy, I want you really involved. And so you have been ever since. And we started out that first one, 6 instructors, 65 students, 1 room. The promise was you will leave with a website and a sale. And I couldn't fulfill that promise because I couldn't control the actions other people would take. Mm-hmm. And so we had to back off on that promise, even though we had people making their first sales.
And that was an exciting event.
It was.
Yeah.
And if you remember, people had horns that we gave them so that when they made a sale during the weekend, they blew the horn.
It got noisy. I do recall.
Yes, it did. So quickly becoming a larger training opportunity based on the feedback. And Jeff Herring said to me, David, you're going to need a bigger boat.
There you go.
Underneath that picture of you, by the way, is a picture from Jaws of the shark biting off the end of that boat. So the feedback was people wanted more hands-on training, they wanted more small groups, and they wanted more focused on the experience level. This is the NAMS 1 group. Here you'll see Chris Cobb is right here, Willie Crawford is right here.
Mary Wilhite.
Mary Wilhite's right here. We have several people here who, Chris Cobb came to this meeting, had never done anything, and is now an instructor at NAMS. So we have people who have gone through the entire experience level and are instructors. Chris, Dan Morris. Dan was in front of her, probably up in here somewhere.
A couple of rows. Yeah, Chris is brilliant. Chris Cobb.
She is. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But this was all one room. We didn't have them broken up into separate experience groups. So the feedback was, I need to be able to talk to people in my experience level. And I thought, that makes so much sense. Nobody's doing that, and we need to do that for these people to be effective. So NAMS 2, we implemented that feedback, 118 students, 18 instructors, 3 tracks, beginner, intermediate, advanced. Same feedback again, more hands-on training, more affiliate marketing focus. Beginners group was too big. Of 118 people, the beginners group was about 65 or 70 people. The advanced group wanted more intimacy. They wanted to be able to have more privacy in their mastermind. Every afternoon in the advanced group, we have mastermind groups for them so they can actually compare business in there and really talk about their businesses. And we were recording everything for everybody who attends. So we decided not to record those mastermind groups in the NAMS 3 event. It was 175 students. We made it 4 tracks, beginner, beginner 1, intermediate, advanced, and we have joint sessions in the beginning and the end of the day. like I said, the advanced group, the recorders were off. So we got a lot better feedback again. Same system on NAMS 4, 200 students. Negative feedback was how to continue the learning and the support. People felt like that they were leaving. You know how you go to a conference and you get all excited and you're going to implement, and then you go away and you can't connect with anybody. So that was the feedback. They wanted to be able to connect with people. We needed a nicer hotel. You and I love that hotel, but other people had some issues, and so we decided to look for a little nicer hotel.
Right. And you know what, I should say I understand, their complaints, so to speak, about the hotel, and my liking the hotel has to do with how many hotels I stay in a year and how many events I attend in a year. And a lot of times huge, gorgeous hotels are nice and everything, but it's so easy for people to get lost, like, for people to group off and go hide, so to speak. But at the hotel that we had the first 4 NAMs, it was so intimate. The setting was so that all the speakers and the attendees could all sit together on the patio, and there were no nooks and crannies. And that's what I loved about it specifically. Right.
And this new hotel has all of that as well, and we have the entire hotel supposedly. So it's going to be a lot nicer. There's a really nice outdoor sitting area with a barbecue pit and by the pool. So it should be, yeah. And there's a Starbucks in the building.
I think I'm going to go now that I've heard that.
You better go.
I'll be there.
So the response to the feedback was we started a forum where we have accountability groups now in the forum. And so people who go through the system can sign up for an accountability group, and they meet weekly, and they are geographically based, and some of them are very active and some of them not so active.
What's cool about that, the fact that they're geographically based, is I've heard from several of the people who are involved in the more active groups, and hey, you guys, it's on you guys to get active with your geographical group, your location-based group. But the cool thing is some of them are getting together.
Yeah, they are.
Which is really nice. Yeah, yeah.
And in fact, they're going to meet in special sections. Some of them are going to meet in special sections. And I'm going to actually try to orchestrate special meetings for people to have at NAM so they can start these groups and sign up and get in and get face-to-face there with each other as well at NAM 6. So NAMS 5 was a test. It was a prototype and a test. Instead of meeting live, and really based on the feedback about more online instruction, more follow-up instruction, we did a 5-day, or actually it was a 7-day webinar series where we did 25 instructors, all of them going to be at NAM 6, and 25 hours of recorded video instructions. And then we followed up with weekly deep dive sessions, which are continuing to go on right up to NAM 6. And people who sign up for NAM 6, by the way, get all of this material. And it was a completely virtual week. The response to that was huge. We had 227 people sign up for that. And that was my prototype and test. The test was successful. We got feedback. We've implemented a lot of the feedback. And we're going to try to incorporate this into a weekly model going forward, even beyond NAM 6. This is really about providing great education is what it is.
It's important. Not everyone can make it to a live event, and there was some feedback, a lot of people who were regulars at the NAMS workshop missed meeting up in person. But the fact is that they also had a hard time, continuing with the education and implementing it, once they got back home. So that really was a kind of a win-win.
Well, and the other thing is, sometimes you have questions about stuff like who said something about whatever plugin it was that helps you schedule your tweets, and you can ask that of a group or a forum member and get an answer pretty quick. So NAM 6 is 55 hours of video instruction, 27 instructors, 300 students, 4 tracks, beginner 1, 2, 3, intermediate, and advanced, hands-on, add-on workshops before and after the 3-day event. We have a keyword session, which is really a foundation for everything that Karen Thaxton and Chris Cobb is going to do the day before. That's an additional fee, small fee.
I think that's on Thursday from 1 to 5, right?
It is. And I'll be sending out a link about that to everybody. Then there is also at the same time for the advanced group, there's going to be a Mark Hendricks Q&A session. Mark he knows everything from beginning to end, and he really is a wealth of information. So it's an opportunity for people in the advanced groups to really get a lot of stuff answered. And then, like I said, the new hotel. So the workshop is, if you're interested, is August 19th to the 21st. The add-on is the 18th and the 22nd. Jeff Herring, by the way, Jeff and Maritza has a social media blueprint workshop on Monday afterwards, which is always very popular and really good, full day of social media. And you get a $100 discount off the $397 price by using this coupon code, 100SPECIAL. Go to nams.ws/Lynn-T, all lowercase.
Now that coupon code and the 3 payment plan are only good this month in May, correct?
It is. We're going to be done with this by the end of May.
Yeah, and that's a week.
That's a week. It is.
Okay, gotcha.
So, not only do they get to come to the workshop, they get to come and get all of the video instruction. I mean, this is a huge, huge package of instructional material. Huge.
Yeah, good stuff too. I mean, really good stuff. It's really, I can't wait to listen back into Terry Dean again.
Yep.
But I think the workshop, I go to a lot of events, like I said a few minutes ago, and there's something special about the atmosphere of NAMS. People there, they're action takers. The speakers are completely different, than even when I see them at other events. It is one of the most open, friendly atmospheres that I've ever seen at a marketing or online business event, because you can actually sit down and have dinner with Karen Thaxton or with Willie Crawford, or it's the one place where you can just sit and have a coffee with Willie Crawford or Jeff Herring or whatever, and there's just something unique about the atmosphere there.
Well, the unique thing is that we pitch very little. I mean, people at the end of their presentation, the way it works is that they do a 60-minute presentation basically about their topic, and in Jeff's case it might be social media, it might be repurposing, it might be article marketing, and at the end he'll give you a little 5-minute deal about how you can get in touch with him, and this is what his latest course is. But then he moves right into a 60 to 90-minute hands-on instruction period where you can sit with Jeff and the helpers in the room and actually perform the acts, the tasks that he's just discussed for an hour.
The workshops are my absolute favorite. My favorite. I mean, I love to teach this stuff. I'm not a speaker. I'm definitely a teacher. I love to teach this stuff. But the workshop period is my absolute favorite. When I get to walk around the room, and I've actually gotten, to sit down on someone else's computer and fix something for them real quick, or show them, how it works and why it doesn't here or this or that. And that is so, it is so productive. It's so productive. I mean, so much gets accomplished in that amount of time, because it's actually, okay, you learned it, now let's put it in action. Let's implement it on the spot.
Yep, that's the way we've designed it, so I'm really happy about it. We've got a couple of questions here real quick. Okay. Actually, they're comments. Bob says he just tried the mind map link and it didn't work for him. It was nams.ws, not .com, .ws, nams.ws/6lynn. And it's an opt-in at the bottom there to get into that e-course. And you'll get the mind map. I just tried it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just tried it, and it's working for me. I see the steps to big ideas. Scroll down, I see the blue box.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, it's at the bottom of the page.
And the other thing is, Donnie says, this is one of the best hours I've spent in years. Good, thank you, Donnie. Glad to hear that.
Thank you, Donnie. Very nice.
Yep. And David, does the NAM 6 continue through Monday as usual? Yes, it does. We have a Monday morning breakfast, so people want to book their planes to go home on the 22nd, because we have a Monday morning networking breakfast. This is always good. A lot of people stay for that. In fact, most people stay for that because they get a lot of networking done there, as well as reviewing what they learned that weekend. It's really a good session. And then they move right into the Jeff Herring thing if they want to do that.
Yeah, it's good. Stay over if you can. If you can stay over through Monday, definitely do. I like to stick around, and just hang out and talk to everybody and see, see how was the weekend for you. And I think it was a year ago. It was NAMS 3 in January. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, a year and a half ago. Yeah.
I stayed over that Monday. My daughter came with me to NAMS. Boy, did she ever learn a lot about affiliate marketing. She was excited.
She was so
Anyway,
sweet.
we had such a fun time that Monday, just hanging out, and saying bye to everybody as they were leaving, and talking and having coffees, and we even stayed for lunch. We had a really nice time because it's more of a good social time.
Yeah.
A good networking time also. Yes.
And to tell the truth, I don't participate a whole lot in that because I am absolutely exhausted by Monday. But I do see you sitting out there with groups of people. When I pack up the truck at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're still sitting there talking to people. So
Yeah.
there's lots of folks that are doing that. More questions we have is, where is it? Oh yeah, I didn't put that on there. It is in Atlanta. It's always in Atlanta right now. We haven't expanded to any other cities. It's January and August in Atlanta. It is at the Marriott Century Center in Atlanta. Very nice new hotel. Can you define the NAMS levels in more detail? I'm not sure which one I fall into. Okay, I should. You're right. That's a good, that came out of feedback, by the way. This is a good example. Beginners 1 is you have a computer. That's it. I mean, you may have a Facebook page, you may have a Twitter account. You don't necessarily have either. But you're a basic beginner who wants to build a website and an online business.
You have not ever made a sale online.
Not ever made a sale online.
On purpose.
On purpose, right. That's right. Beginner two is that you have something in place. You have a niche chosen. You have a site, a blog, or even a Facebook account where you're selling through, or those kind of things, or even through Twitter that you're selling. You don't always have to have a website or a blog. But you have a niche and you are trying to make sales. You're just not very successful at it at that point.
Kind of lost.
Kind of lost. And then you need some help.
Might be making a few sales accidentally.
Accidentally. And then intermediate is you got things cooking. You're making some money. It supplements your income. It's not your full-time income. But you got some things going. You might have 1, 2, or 3 niches. You might have just one niche. You might you just need a lot more refinement and a way to move your business faster because you want to really take it serious at this point.
The intermediates are probably working too hard, working too many hours, and not making enough money.
Yep.
That would be my description of an intermediate.
That's really true. The advanced is the group that is cooking. They are making money. They're making a full-time living from their online businesses, and they are, whether they have one niche or more, and they want to learn how to, what do I call it? What is that, Lynn? We talk about businesses that we want to...
You want to streamline?
No, well, but make them...
To me, it's that they want to take it to max profit potential. They're ready to go to the next level.
Yeah. And you also want to create your assets in that business. So if you ever decided you wanted to have a business that was bigger than you, and believe me, businesses get bigger than you fast, you want to have a business that you can sell or something. You're that kind of advanced person who really starts looking at exit strategies and max profit and all of that stuff. So.
Yeah, and and working less and making more. Everything's working fine, but the refinement of a successful business, that's the advanced class.
Yep, that's it. Okay, and let's see. Terry says, you two are terrific people, really pure inspiration on so many levels. Nice, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bob, you had the link wrong, so that's good. It was not 6-1, it is 6-Lynn. That's right. Okay, so I'm done. Do you have any questions?
I don't. I'm excited about this. I took a couple of really good notes here. And I told you, I am bad to fly by the seat of my pants. I'm dream execute sometimes. So I think this was a really good refresher for me about, making sure that I go through all the steps, not dream execute test. I think it's just, we need to drive that point home because that's so common.
Well, the other point I want to drive home about you, though, is you've been doing this so long that the prototype test is pretty much built into your nature now. You can do that quickly.
Right. But that does not that doesn't excuse me really, because I still make the same mistakes everyone else does. It really is important to look at these things again. These are classics, like you said. These are not new concepts. They are
Nope.
classic, tried and true concepts. They're not fly-by-night strategies. They're not hot trends right now. These are classics. And that really appeals to me. I am a big fan of Napoleon Hill. I have so many books of his work here.
Right.
But that really appeals to me. And all of us fall into that trap of, you know, lazy shortcuts. And so I call myself the lazy affiliate marketer all the time. I loved the points that you made here. No questions, but I will say that I'm super anxious to hear your single points of failure talk in August.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I've had many single points of failure myself, so that will be a very good talk.
Well, I'll give you one sample quickly. I had one man who, I had a hosting company, and I had one man who I was buying my hosted or my servers through, and he was providing all the support, and he died.
Mm.
And that threw everything into a real tizzy. So
I remember that.
That was serious business, and that was one of many that I ran up against this year. So
major single point of failure. Yes.
Yep. Anytime there's one of anything, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining in. And David, thank you so much for taking the time to explain this to us. Like I said, simple concepts, but classic, tried and true. And I appreciate your time. And thanks, guys, for sticking it out with us. We went a little over an hour, but it was so worth it to me. And hopefully you got a lot out of it as well.
Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.